Welcome to Heal the World Show podcast, brought to you by the Healing Institute. I'm Parmelia Parham. I'm the founder and the CEO of the Healing Institute. We are an online worldwide hub of holistic practitioners, and we are out to heal the world. We want to give people hope. We want people to know that there are ways to be well and stay well on their health journey, because we know we're all on a health journey. So I'm passionate about creating a proactive wellness society. And so each month we have a theme. The month of November is transformational health. It also is Alzheimer's Awareness Month, so people need to be aware of that. But we have a guest co-host each week who comes and talks about their area of expertise. And I just love doing this show. I've been studying healing and alternative ways for health for well over 30 years, and I know it works. So you might ask why this is important to me. Well, we had a tragedy in our family a few years ago. My mom passed away at the age of 61, and it was due to a complication with some medication that she had been taking for a very long time, and it had interfered with one of her organs. And so we had no idea that this was going to happen. It happened right before Christmas, December 15th. I was 5 months pregnant with my son, my first child. And you know what was the tragedy? Not only that she died so young, but also my children never got to meet their grandmother. And I really just don't want that to happen for other families. That's one of the reasons I called the Healing Institute, because I'm really passionate about educating people, having the education so people can make informed decisions about their health. So today I am very, very excited to have David Lederman with us. He is a transformational leadership coach, and it's a perfect time to talk about that and leadership and transformation in the month of November, which is our theme, transformational health. So welcome, David. Tell us a little bit about yourself. David's coming all the way from Romania, so I'm very excited that we are all over the world, and that is the intent of the Healing Institute.
Well, thanks for having me. I'm really excited to be here and to talk and to share with your listeners the trials and bits that I've collected along my journey as we're all on our journey and stuff. But a bit about me: I am a diehard father of a 10-year-old who I absolutely adore, a husband. I am a coach. I don't even like to use that word because it's more than that. I'm all about why I love this month and this theme of transformation is, to me, transformation is about change, not just through knowing something, but actually embodying that change. And I was somebody in life who often understood a lot about what it means to live a good or well life, to perform well, all that. But there's a big difference between doing it and just understanding it. And to me, that's what transformation is all about. So I'm really thrilled to be here. And see where the conversation goes.
Well, I love that, David, because really you're right. You know, we have the concept, and I think we've all been raised like this, that what's going on in our cognitive brain is, you know, the end all and the be all. And then as we get into understanding more and studying, and I know you have done the studying, most wellness people in the wellness realm have done some introspective studying of themselves, and also finding out when you're just not sitting, you're sitting with something that you know just doesn't feel good, or you know there's something, you feel like there's something more out there, and so we pursue it, and we do our research, and we start to study, and we take courses, and we read books. And so to then take that transformation that out of the cognitive brain into your whole body, you know, that is so very important. And certainly, you know, the work that I do with the body code and the emotion code, you need to feel what's going on in your body so that you can make those changes. They're not always easy, and oftentimes we have to go through what we would, you know, consider a little bit of turmoil. but it's definitely well worth it when we get to the other side. So that is, I love that about just having that information. And so as this transformational, I don't know, I just want to call you a guru because you do so many amazing things. As you help your clients, can you give us an idea of some the results perhaps that some of your clients have experienced? Because our audience also likes to know if, you know, we want them to meet you and get to know you. And if they were chose to work with you, what what could be some of the results?
Yeah, so the main thing that I really have honed in on is, in 2015, I slammed into a really low point. I don't like to use the word rock bottom because it's overused these days, but we went through a lot of trauma trying to start a family, loss that I wouldn't wish on anybody. Marital struggles from that emerged, and had a side hustle that failed after 3 years, and work stuff and burnout. Like all this kind of came together. And I ironically had a background in user experience in the tech world and design, right? Understanding patterns and going, okay, why is marketing's doing this, the executive team wants this, the users want this, the engineering team can do this. How do we make all that fit together? And what I started to realize in my own life was I was doing what all these best-selling books were talking about, because I was reading tons of them to go, how do I dig myself out of this, right? And what I started to find was there were these huge contradictions in the wisdoms of our day that nobody's talking about, right? And I'll just give you an example. It's like you often hear, stay the course to grow stronger. And then you hear or read right next to it, you see a book that says, basically pivot, don't ignore when life is nudging you to change, right?
Yeah.
And if you're an entrepreneur, like you are, like I am, you know how important that is, right? And so there are all these different truths that are out there that we all are trying to better understand. But where I was struggling was the meeting points of those truths, right? And so it's one thing to say to somebody, put the oxygen mask on first, practice radical self-care, but realize you get so much more by giving. And go,
Yeah.
okay, in our modern day, in our modern world where life is more chaotic than ever, where there's, whether it's war, the environment, or other things, there's all kinds of macro level dynamics going on. And we're all just trying to find our way. And there's all this wisdom that's trying to help us. And it's all really messy when you actually have to apply it day in and day out. I was like, am I crazy here? And so that led me to go on this just exploration, first of all, just for myself, purely out of selfish reasons, but it turned into something more because I started interviewing people from around the world and from all walks of life. And I would ask them really concrete questions. We, if I would ask somebody, tell me your thoughts on work-life balance, everyone would say something. But when I would really drill in on actual dynamics of what that is, it would get messier. Does that make sense? And so
Everybody's going to say, yes, you have to have work-life balance. And then you say, well, how is your work-life balance?
yeah.
And what are you doing? What are you putting in place for it? Then the question, or, then the answer, you have to wait for the answer, right?
There's that, or what I found was, how do you actually apply these truths, right? And
yes,
more
right.
often than not, people would say, I don't know, like, and not apply them, excuse me. How do you know when to turn to one versus the other? I should say, it's a better way of putting it, right? And the answer I got time and time again was, and followed by like, if you figure that out, let me know. And I was like, I need to know. And why does everyone not seem to really care about that? So anyway, what I have discovered, and over years and years studying all different bodies of wisdom and integrating the neuroscience and the psychology parts that I was passionate about from college, on, with where my life led me, which I never really thought would be exploring all these other areas such as mindfulness and yoga, but in particular, an area that I became fascinated by was indigenous and ancient wisdom, who looked at things like high performance and connection and well-being very differently than how we do. One of the things that I came across was one of my favorite sort of bits of wisdom, sound bites, right? And it's from Zen Buddhism. It's like the saying goes, somebody asked a master, a Zen master, can you help me understand, what happens after enlightenment? And the response was, before enlightenment, you chop wood and carry water. after enlightenment, you chop wood and carry water. And it made me realize, I was like, wait a second, I keep trying to get to some point where I will be well, where I will do better than yesterday, where I will finally be in a position to feel aligned. And that one bit of wisdom is saying it has nothing to do with all the things that I think are getting in the way. And so what I do with people, and I'll get to the original question, which is, what is that like working with a client? I help people align with what I call their zone of fulfillment. When we think of
Oh, I love
fulfillment, we
that
think
term.
of it as, I'm sorry?
I love that term. I love that term, zone of fulfillment. Yes, absolutely.
We think of fulfillment as the payoff. It's this accomplishment. It's what happens after we change
Yeah,
jobs
we have to work towards the goal, and then we'll have fulfillment,
and
and
make it
then
happen,
and then
right?
what happens after that, right?
Exactly. And so what I came to understand is we have it backwards when it comes to fulfillment. Fulfillment isn't the payoff, it's the path. And I don't mean just enjoy the path, because that doesn't make sense when you're in a job where there's toxic bosses and managers and issues and all kinds of stuff. And this client that I'll speak about that I worked with recently, he's an executive, a $1 billion company in the cryptocurrency space.
Mm.
And so you don't have to know much about cryptocurrency, excuse me, but you just need to know that he literally wakes up in the morning and he goes to the bathroom. And before he goes to the bathroom, the company's up $500 million, and he flushes the toilet and it could be down $500 million. Like, there's so much volatility and stress and all that that's just baked into the industry. Okay. And he comes to me and he's like, look, I'm passionate. I love what I do. I love the work that I'm doing in some ways, but he's like, I literally turn off my computer at night. I've got chest pain. I've got hair falling out. He was in his late 30s. He's filthy rich, so he doesn't have to work, but he loves it, right?
Mm.
He's got strained relationships with his wife and his 2 kids, which I knew you could just hear how he was talking that he cared about that.
Mm-hmm.
And he was thinking about, do I leave this job and go do something else because it's killing me, right?
Yeah, big question.
And I asked him, I was like, well, what would you do? He's like, I'm going to open up an animal sanctuary, I think. And I was like, why would you do that? He's like, because it's the furthest thing from this. And my kids love animals, and maybe that'll help rekindle my relationship and so forth. And I said, could be. But I said, what makes you think you're not going to bring a lot of those dynamics to that? And not only that, I go, you love parts of your job, right? He's like, yeah. So I said, what if there's a different way? What if there's a way to actually engage it differently? So instead of spending most of your day trying to get through it, you're going through it in a way that's aligning. And that's the big thing that we don't understand when it comes to fulfillment, because we think we have to get all this aligned and then the fulfillment comes. And so there's mechanics to it that I can get into, but long story short, when you begin to align with the 3 aspects of your zone of fulfillment, and you can do so immediately, you can transform a toxic meeting into something that is, first of all, you become engaged. It can actually be something where you're going to perform at your best. And it's something where the very act, because it's aligning with this unique sphere or this sweet spot, if you will, for you, it's regenerative. So
Yes.
now, instead of it being high performance that has to come at the expense of well-being, this toxic meeting that otherwise would have made you have anything but well-being actually becomes a source of that in the moment, right? And so it's really, really powerful. It's a total game changer. And so working with this executive over about a 6-week period, or a week at a time, really just helped them focus initially on the overall framework, if you will, but then honed in on one particular part that he really, really resonated with. And by really just doing that without changing his job, without changing his boss, without changing the responsibilities that he has and the volatility in the space, chest pain stopped, hair loss went away. It's funny because he's European, and he comes from a particular culture where, it's like the men are macho. And I'll
Yeah.
never forget one time we were on a call, and the first thing he says to me, because I'm like, how you doing? Because he had texted me earlier in the week, like, things are going great and all that. And he's like, I'm upset. And I was like, why? He goes, because my wife said I'm glowing this morning. And I was like, what's bad about that? And he's like, I'm a man, I shouldn't glow. So anyway, I joke about that because I'm not trying to get into gender issues or things like that. But it's just funny because in essence, he had all this energy that came out of nowhere, right?
Mhm.
Without having to change all this stuff and without doing what I often hear people do, which is think about, let me just get through this. And then
Yeah.
completely moved away from that and made this experience, whatever it is in front of you, something that's really, really, really fulfilling. And so your zone of fulfillment is a way for you to go through this moment and any moment really in the way that's the most aligning and the most fulfilling and the most impactful. And he's thriving. And it's just a beautiful, beautiful thing.
That's a fabulous story. I love that story. And oftentimes, too, as you were saying, when we're looking for fulfillment, we're looking for it outside of ourselves. And so when we have to align, we have to align with what really resonates, and we, feel that zone of fulfillment is within. It's not outside. It's how our heart says it's a good thing, our intuition says it's a good thing. And then oftentimes when we're looking at being happier, let's say, or more joyful, it's not things necessarily. It's our attitude could be our attitude about things, but still it's kind of it's more introspective, I find, than looking at
That's a key part, but the problem is that we live, so I'll get into it a bit just to clarify, because that's what we often hear.
Mhm.
And I'm not out to say, like, I don't agree with that, but there's more nuance to it than that. And it's really important that people understand that. So the three spheres, think like a Venn diagram.
Yeah.
There's three spheres. One is your vitality. This is everything that's alive inside of you. And that includes a lot of the stuff that we're not conscious of that's influencing us in this moment. And most of us are so accustomed to trying to get to that better tomorrow, even if it's enlightenment, to finally get to the point where they can actually just honor what's alive in them. And we've lost the ability, most of us, to be able to do that. Okay. And so the first sphere, if you will, is your vitality and learning and becoming better at just honoring what's alive in you in this moment, because that then moves you into sort of the next sphere, which is what I call your mirror. This is everything unfolding around you. So that toxic work meeting that you're in right now is literally reflecting back aspects of yourself. And that doesn't mean that you have to just sit there and say, oh, this is great. And okay, I just have to be positive about this, which is the way I often thought, let me just change my attitude. What it's doing is it's giving you feedback to understand there's some aspect of yourself that's ready to be released, that's ready to move on, that's no longer serving you, that's creating that friction, right? And if you can tune into that, there's ways to do that effectively, in addition to having already honored what is triggered. I don't want to use just the word triggered, but what's coming up for you in your body and your emotions and your thoughts and so forth. Now you're at the point to sort of open up sphere 3. And sphere 3 is something that I learned from indigenous cultures that they call your medicine. And your medicine is so much more than what people think of as our genius and our values and our passions. It's literally the heart and soul and essence of everything we are and are here to share with the world. Most of us have no relationship to that, and life constantly wants us to align with that. And the thing is that it takes time to do that. But one of the quickest ways to do that is to tune in, like you were saying, and go, okay, what does my heart really, really want right now? And the problem is we often jump right to that without engaging the first two spheres. And so when we try to hear our heart without looking at those first two spheres, often what we want is something that's basically to mitigate or a counter to what it is in us we're not allowing ourselves to honor and feel. Does that make sense? So it's like, I joke with my daughter, I'm like the Snickers commercials where the person's really hangry and upset. I was like, they did that after me, because when I get hangry, it's like walked out, right? So when I'm hangry, guess what my heart wants? I want food, right? But when I'm actually coming from a place that's more, I want to say baseline, but where it's no longer about mitigating something that's not in alignment, then what does my heart really, really want, right? And so one of the things that I'll do with people is I'll literally just walk them through a short little practice where it's like, okay, let's see what's alive in us about an issue that's not serving them. What is life mirroring back? And when they start to realize that, it's like, whoa. And then we do a practice where we go, okay, not literally if that wasn't there, but when that gets removed, what would you be doing? What could you be doing? And so often people are like, oh, I would be doing my passion project that I have to do on the weekends and so forth, right? Or I would be, flying a plane over Tahiti or whatever it is, right? And what's interesting is that that's moving. Once they start doing that, they're literally moving into a different part of their brain and a different part of their spirit, right? But the
Right.
beauty is that that literally is just a symbol for a state of being that you can bring into this moment right here and now. And that state of being, let's say it's you flying over Tahiti in this moment with everything that's going around you is going to translate to a certain state of being, certain essence. It might be freedom, it might be exploration, it might be adventure, whatever it is, you're going to feel it in here.
Hmm.
The gift of that is without having to know how or why, that's what's aligning with your medicine. And the nature of medicine is such that your mere presence alone becomes a gift to others. So if you can learn to, let's say, honor and hear what that is, and then use your creativity and imagination to go, okay, how do I bring that into this toxic meeting or whatever it is that seems to be the block to me flying a plane over Tahiti? You don't need the plane anymore. And you
Right.
now go through this experience in a way that's incredibly aligning for you, very connecting, and extremely impactful in ways that honestly, most of my clients come back and they're just like, wow, there are all these happy accidents and people are like his wife going, my client's wife going like, whoa, right? So it's one of those things where, yes, there is an internal part, but there's an external part too.
Yeah.
And we have to also honor these tensions, if you will, in a way that's practical. And that's why, for me, the zone of fulfillment is so powerful because it's like it's getting to these meeting points and allows us
Mhm.
to dance with them in a way that doesn't require 6 months of training to be able to see results.
Well, I love the way you explained that, David, because as that diagram, and then how they can how they relate, definitely those three areas. That makes perfect. To me anyway, it makes perfect sense. So thank you for that explanation. I
Good.
just want to let people, or honor the fact that we have one of our holistic practitioners who's popped on today, Marie Piplovic. She's a conscious breathing facilitator and also a transformational coach for women who are going through midlife transformation. So she has a couple of great questions. So let's see. Do you think transformation can occur strictly within the mind slash thoughts, or is the key to bringing it into the body? I think we almost answered that already.
So one of the things I love about a particular lineage of shamanism that I've become very interested in on my exploration is that they say there's 4 levels of life. It corresponds to the 4 seasons, the 4 directions, even the 4 root forces that give rise to everything in the universe, right? From a science perspective. And in essence, we're all 4 of those levels,
Mhm,
right? There's the literal
mhm.
physical level, we're made of bones and so forth. There's the mental, emotional. There's the mythic level, which gets to that part of us we can't really put words to, but we can feel there's more to us. And then
Mhm.
there's a pure energetic, right? E equals MC squared, matter and energy, like it's related. So at the end of the day, anybody who says, well, first of all, when somebody says within the mind, my question is, what do you mean by the mind? Because oftentimes people think it's just thoughts and what's here. Other times people say it's all of our conscious awareness and so forth. And to me, transformation can occur or occurs when you have all of those elements in alignment, right? In that moment about whatever issue it is, right? It's like why my wife always makes fun of me. She's like, she'll tell me something, and I'm like, okay, okay, okay. And then I'll read it 15 different times, and then somebody else says it one more time, and it just clicks because now I'm ready because those other pieces of me are ready.
Right.
And like a seed being in the right soil, if you will. Now it clicks. Now there's the transformation. And now I'm like, whoa, did you hear this? And she's like, yeah, I told you that months ago. You know what I mean?
I love that. That's great. Okay, so I think that definitely answers Marie's question. Another question she has, we hear, don't give up, pivot, accept, let the universe guide you, etc., etc. It can be overwhelming. So how do we discern what's best for each of us?
That's a great question. And that's why I ultimately came up with the zone of fulfillment because you engaging that zone will look very differently moment to moment and person to person. And I like to use the analogy of dancing because when you dance to a song, you're not going to dance the exact same way unless it's like a competition to every part of the same song. And even on the dance floor with all the people around you, sometimes you're gonna accelerate and actually exert yourself. Other times you might be with somebody and you're actually in a state where even though you're moving, you're not exerting yourself, right? So this notion of, well, should I just sit and be? Should I go and grow? It's gonna shift. And what's right for you is going to depend on what's alive in you, what's happening around you, and what your medicine, how that's guiding you in the moment. And when you begin to build relationship to that, you can begin to trust it. The one common denominator in all of that is a sense of, the best word I can use is expansion. When we feel
Yes.
that in our body, in our mind, in our emotions at every level, that inspiration, if you will, that's a sign that we're in the right direction. The only caveat to that is so often we're making unconscious decisions that are like putting on a tight belt. And so we spend most of our days just tightening the belt and then taking the belt off and tightening the belt and taking it back off. And that can feel like it's expansion, but it's actually just relief,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
And discerning the difference between those two are really, really important. That's where you get into some of the nuance of this. But at the end of the day, when you feel that expansive state, and you begin to understand that it doesn't mean that it's always like yes, because you can be sitting on a cliff looking over the most amazing view and be in total silence and at peace, but you still feel expansion. So it has
Right.
many different qualities to it. It's not a black and white thing, but the ultimate thing is you are the only one who can know that, and you have to build relationship to that.
I love that. That's beautiful. Yes. And always tapping into how you're feeling physically, emotionally, mentally, which we're not taught to do. So it is a learning process for us. Okay, so she says fulfillment equals the path. I want to know more about this idea. And also, can you share one way that you help your clients step into this zone of fulfillment? Well, I think we answered that. You answered that
Yeah.
question when you were talking about the diagram.
Mhm.
Her next part of the question is how it might fit into the other common phrase that we grow through discomfort. You have to be
Yeah,
just, we have
sure.
to be uncomfortable to grow.
Yeah. So fulfillment doesn't always feel good. That's the first thing. I tell people it's the path of ease, but it's not easy. Again, you have to understand what our baseline current or starting state often is, which is this. And
Mhm.
so this notion of something that's like fulfillment is, oh, I'm going to be able to put my feet up and just sit on a beach. And it's like, yes, it's like that might be fulfilling relative to where you are now, but that's mostly relief. And there's a reason why that gets old after a while, right? If you're sitting
Mhm.
on the same beach for 3 months, you're just like, I need to go somewhere else. Okay. So the thing that is really important to understand is there's a part of us that is sort of amazing how we are, and that's honoring what's alive in us. And it might not feel amazing, but it is amazing when you can begin to understand that it's here, it's alive. It's incredible that that's actually going on, right? And then there's a part of us that's stepping into our medicine, which is our medicine is something that's moving us like every mythic story. It's the hero's journey. It's
Mhm.
going beyond what we are and what we could possibly fathom for ourselves. And both of those are true at the exact same moment. The problem is we think in a very sort of linear binary way. Is it this or is it this? Is it this or it's this? And I go, think of an infant that you've seen recently. And when you hold that infant, you're just like, wow, you look at them and go, oh my God, they're the most beautiful baby. And at the same time, they're also literally becoming something that's going to transform them on every level in your relationship to them. So this notion of growing through discomfort is a key part of this process because you need to do that, but not all discomfort's the same. And I
Yes.
always tell people to climb up or to drive up a mountain, you need to overcome all kinds of friction and resistance and things of that sort. But you can also be driving with your car half off the road or completely off the road, right? In order to change your perspective, which I believe is ultimately what growth is, we need to shift our perspective. Driving with your car half off the road and enduring all kinds of discomfort in and of itself actually just burns you out.
Yeah.
So not all resistance is the same. And yes, we grow through discomfort, but we grow through aligned discomfort.
Hmm.
And your zone of fulfillment will put you in situations where it's going to trigger the heck out of you because there is a part of the process where you have to release and shed things that you just showed up with or that you've inherited from childhood, in your family, lineage and so forth. That's part of that process. And then the zone of that's getting way more detailed into the zone of fulfillment. But those spheres, in particular, the first one, which is your vitality, what's alive in you? There's so much in us that's holding us back, which is why we normalize a day-to-day life that is so our energy's low. The strain is what's we consider to be, normal stress and survive, like all that's been normalized. And if we truly begin to understand that we as grown-ups, there's no reason why we can't have the same energy if you see like my daughter, right? Who's 10 years old, and it's like, man, she just moment she wakes up, it's like she's got an insane amount
It's
of
full
energy,
into
right?
life.
Exactly. So when we begin to understand that fulfillment is that energy, that life force, that inspiration, that actually is our baseline. We've just been taught to see it that, we have to squeeze and move forward in order to get to some point where hopefully we can feel that again.
Yeah.
But if you start to go, wait a second, engagement, high performance, well-being, inner peace, connection, if those are my tools instead of the payoff, how does that change things? And it's a total paradigm shift,
Absolutely. Yeah,
but it's
for sure.
really, really, really powerful.
I love that. I love that. So speaking of your daughter, I want to talk a couple more things. You
Yeah.
and your daughter published a book. Tell us a little
Mhm.
bit about that.
Yeah, it's called Chava Pufi and the Magical Firewood. So when she was 3.5, we just came up with this story um, together. And I'm a big fan of indigenous storytelling, mythic stories, and using in those cultures, story was a teacher. It helped
Yes.
children
Yeah.
develop. And so my daughter at the time was going through big emotions, tantrums, we call them big feelings, right? And I didn't want to just keep everything at the mental level. And what's cool about story and getting to that mythic level, that soul level, when you hear a story that's written in that manner, it activates the imagination and it allows children and even grown-ups to see beyond the common perspectives that they have in a way that the mind kind of settles down and says, okay, I'm kind of intrigued by this story. It's captivating me, so I'll
Mhm.
go along with it. And through characters, through symbolism and other layers to these stories, you just have something where if you hear a good indigenous story, like one of my favorite ones is 30 minutes long. And when I tell it to people, I often do it by campfires. I mean, I had a group once where there was a 6-year-old all the way up to a 55-year-old. And when we kind of got together the next day after hearing it, because it was late at night when we heard it, the 55-year-old was like, this story, I can't get out of my head. Like it's just it's there's something that speaks to us. It's meant to meet us where we're at. And the 6-year-old had a totally different take on the 55-year-old's view of the ending, where the 55-year-old was like, I can't believe it ended this way. And the 6-year-old was like, that's not how it ended. It ended like this. And he was like, whoa. And so with my daughter, I wanted to give her some of those with characters that she could grow with
Mhm.
and also that she could have say in and so forth. And so these characters are such where Chava's this girl who's super brave, but really inexperienced and very scared of big feelings. And Poofy is scared of everything. But when it comes to big feelings, she's like, what's the big deal? Just feel them. And so together, they go on all these adventures. There's actually 5 books in the series right now. We're working on the 6th one. They go and help, the village find the magical firewood that they need to keep kind of going. And it's their strengths of each other balance the weaknesses of each other. And so it was just something that was really beautiful that we never thought we'd turn into a book. But one day she's like, let's share this with people. So we turned it into a whole project she was a part of.
Oh,
She helped with everything,
that's amazing.
illustration and so
What
forth. Yeah,
a
it's really
what a
awesome.
beautiful story.
Mm.
Just the story about you and your daughter doing that, as well as the story about Hava and Boofy. I
Yeah.
really I want to read those now. And now, also, just before we finish up for today, you have a book that's coming out just very, very shortly.
Yeah, it's called Trust Life as a question. So there's literally a question mark at the end of Trust Life. And it's really about overcoming the 4 critical life paradoxes that are wreaking havoc in your lives. So I really, after years, 5 years of interviewing people, I came to see that there are these 4 critical contradictions in the advice that's out there that whether you're aware of it or not is where we're really struggling. And each one of those corresponds and leads us through to a critical breakthrough. And that's what helps us, again, navigate these, like Marie was asking about. It's like we often hear, like, we got to grow through discomfort, but there's nuance to it. And so the book really dives into what gives rise to these paradoxes. How do you navigate through them to get through the breakthrough? And it's also very, very forthcoming about my journey and the struggles that I went through in trying to do that, because I just want to give voice to the fact that it's not, what's the word? It's not discounting any of the truths that are out there. It's saying we just need to orient to them slightly differently so that they can align with each other.
Exactly. Yeah. And when is that coming out? You said it's very shortly, within a week or two?
Yeah, my plan is next month. I might hold it off till January for the actual, like, sort of official launch. But it'll be on my website. Yeah, people
Wonderful.
can
And we've
grab
got your
that.
website and your email. That'll all be in what we call the show notes, so people can get in touch with you. Well, thank you, David. Oh my goodness, this has just been such a remarkable conversation. I don't want it to end, but we do have, well, a little over 30 minutes, but that's okay. It's all good. So anyway, yes, I want people to know, the vision that we have with the Healing Institute is really to have a community, which we do, of health practitioners, and they customize whatever you need to what you need. So it's not one size fits all at all. We definitely, all our practitioners are holistic. They look at what's the root cause of what your issue might be, whether it's physical, emotional, mental, or spiritual. I love our motto. Our motto is service with love. And we have a big ask. We are out to heal the world. So please share this podcast with your friends, your family, your community. Let them know that we have this amazing directory of holistic practitioners and the amazing guest co-hosts that I have, like today. And so you got to meet another one today, David Litterman. Thanks so much, David.
Thank you for having me. This was great.